Once more, random and spontaneous insights from the studio, and I must admit, I have almost no idea where this is going to end up. The inner world, inner, outer, either, either, neither, neither. Where's this going to end up? I have a feeling what is motivating me to make this video is a response, is an inner requirement, a need, a feeling that wells up in me that distinguishes something within myself that truly is what I would consider to be an inner world. All right. Let me reference this again to a YouTuber I listen to occasionally, several YouTubers. I just revisited one YouTuber. He calls himself Carpo719. It's worthwhile listening to him because he has a lot of heartfelt reflections about simple things in the universe, in our existence, in the universe, in our existence. He has reflections that actually make a lot of sense, but I don't listen to him often. I just revisited him after a few years, and it leaves me kind of wondering about my own, I suppose, for lack of a better word again, like a strength, an inner strength, something that makes me feel that there is a conviction, that there is a sense of self based on something that is independent completely, totally of anything that comes from what I experience to be the outside world. And I think now it's important, what I'd like to address, what I'd like to talk about, is the idea of an inner world, which is invoked. Another YouTuber I listen to occasionally is this quantum of conscience guy. Phenomenal analysis of what is considered to be the real world and what is real, what is not real. It's kind of like that matrix idea that he has latched onto and is exploring in terms of events that occur in the real world that appear to be manipulated or what are considered to be hoaxes or false flags. And there's an entire contingent among this YouTube community, and generally speaking, people that have a real desire, an honest, true desire to identify what is meaningful, significant. I'm not even going to say real, because I'm going to get caught up with all the fact junkies who are so focused on facts that essentially, as this quantum of conscience guy has pointed out, our narratives and stories presented to us, served to us on a platter to chew up. Whether it's something horrendous like the pedestophile, the people that are absolute brutal reptiles in this existence, creating enormous suffering and obstacles to our becoming. I think this is one of the things that I've understood about my own self, that suffering is an obstacle rather than a facilitator. That people say, well, if you haven't suffered, you can't really have an opinion or have a sense of yourself. I don't subscribe to that. I actually find myself much more in line with a vibration that doesn't require this idea of suffering. I'm not sure why. I've never bought into that, even though there is this sort of thing, no pain, no gain. It might have an application. I'm not sure, although I wouldn't say that what it is that I have understood about myself has come through pain. Quite on the contrary. What I've understood about myself has come through a sense of euphoria, almost a sense of feeling myself connected to. I suppose, yeah, it's a pleasure it's a pleasure center that within myself. What I don't know. Is it a thought? If you imagine your thought to be able to create this sense of feeling pleasure, that you don't have to get drunk or use drugs of any kind, or gratify oneself through pleasure feelings, that even an idea, a thought, maybe even manifested as an image, a painting, something that you creates enormous sense of pleasure within oneself. And this is very important in the sense of identifying the inner world. And I bring up this quantum of consciousness because he says, fuck the world out there, you have to go within yourself. But what does that mean? What does that truly mean, to go inside, within oneself? To have a sense about what it is that is significant and meaningful to you as a human being. What does that mean? And it always seems to come back to this line about the inner self. I talk about this myself, and I'm actually guilty of not having identified what it is that what is this inner world? What exactly is this inner world? What is it? And it's like this Carpo guy is like sitting on his couch and noodling over all these minute details about experiences, from smoking weed to taking your kid on a walk and observing a sunset. And I actually left a comment, said, how about tackling something a little more controversial, something that people would be offended by if you bring it up, like child trafficking or children being abused, or people that are abusing their power to abuse the vulnerable, or Fukushima, the death plants like Fukushima that are going to sink our ship physically. I still am, obviously, as you can hear, I'm still attached to the idea that there is, in fact, a real world, a physical world, But the notion, what I want to talk about, what I felt today after listening to a few of the YouTubers, and especially this quantum of conscience again, bringing up the idea of you have to look within yourself. But what does that mean? What does that mean to look within oneself? What does it mean for me to investigate, to find, to see, to have a sense about my own inner world, which basically disregards, denies anything that has that is considered to be an external existence? And probably, as I have said before, the concept of nothing makes no sense, because if all we can conceive of is something, there is no way that I can have a sense of nothing. I can only perceive something. So, meaning, this is relevant from the point of view that my reflections on this notion of the inner world comes from, I suppose, that experience that I have of what that means to me. And it may mean something to you as well if I talk about this. And the reason I talk about this is because my sense, and I may be too attached to what is understood to be the real world. I look at the birds feeding at our bird feeder, or the chipmunks, or the stray cats that Maria feeds. I have this sense of importance about something other than myself, and as such, I understand what it is that is myself, that inner world. I understand. So I'm going to just talk about what it means for me to address that inner world. It's important. I'm convinced this is important. We need to make this distinction, because I can just throw out, well, look inside yourself. All right, you sit down, you're quiet, whichever way you create a feeling around yourself that gives you that sense of isolation from everything, and thoughts come to my mind. I feel this quite often, every day. Thoughts, as what I've said, quiet myself. What does it mean to go in? for me, there is this quietness that I establish, that I feel uninterrupted, to allow something to come into my mind. Now, in my own case, there is a sort of noisy part, a kind of what feels almost like a distraction. This has been addressed by different people, that sort of voice in the back of your head coming up and, have you paid this bill, or you're pissed off with this person, or things that rise to the surface immediately are usually discarded. I usually discard. But what is it? Is that actually part of the inner world? You see, I don't think it is. It's still a distraction. What is it that makes me have a sense of this inner world, this inner feeling of, or this, the ability to distinguish that something is happening outside, regardless of whatever is going on, it's happening. The world could be in flames, but something is still happening independently on a completely different level, on a completely different plane. It's almost like the idea that one of these martyrs who is being tortured by the Inquisition, by the bastards creating suffering, and one of these martyrs, I'm not sure who it was, but I'm sure one of them had this magnificent ability to detach themselves from the world that they were being confronted with. And he said to his torturer, please turn me over, I'm done on that side. This is kind of an ultimate statement of inner sense of self. It may sound a little funny to you, but I think about this in the sense that the world is falling apart, coming apart at the seams. Like I say, we are in perilous times in relation to the world that is existing, that we are a part of. But we're also by ourselves in the sense that there is a world completely separate from that, which is something that we need to contact. And how do we do that? How do I do that? How do I put myself in a position to have a chance to be able to contact that world? It's kind of like a dual existence. It feels like, in some ways, like a dual existence. Outer world, inner world. But what does that mean? This is what I'm trying to get at. This is what I'm attempting to articulate. And I know it exists because as a painter, I produced images that I have no idea where they came from. I mean, I could analyze things and say, yes, I'm influenced, but there is an aspect to this activity that gives me access to what I say is the inner world. And this is referenced to me. If it means something to you, go with it. Like the way Carpo 719 has reflections about his own life. I feel this guy to be very sincere, like the quantum of conscience guy. Other YouTubers that I listen to that generally speaking, are referring to the world that exists out there and not within, which is the great advantage I feel I have as a painter, because everything that is of significance to me in terms of the work that I produce, what I make, a painting, is a reflection of this inner world. So, okay, what I'd like to focus my attention on is to distinguish, for a person that is truly interested in finding what it is that is their own nature, their own inner true self. What am I? What am I? Am I some fascistic, brutalizing barbarian, or am I truly an enlightened being, whatever that might mean, enlightened being, somebody that is actually flowing within a vibration that contributes rather than contravenes in some form. I think this is obviously, I reflect on this. Am I a barbarian, reptile, degenerate, or do I have a quality within myself that I would say flows within the scheme of things? How is this reflected? How is my inner world reflected in the outside world? Do you see what I'm saying here? There is this duality feeling, but what does it mean to be not of the outside world? What is it? And it seems like a ridiculous question because, yeah, you're you, I'm me. There's a separation. You have your body, I have my body. We are distinct beings. But what does that mean to be this distinct being that has been created within this existence? What does that mean? How do we get at that? How do we get at that inner self? What does it mean to look inside? And here is when I reflect on this, even as an exercise, what I brought up earlier already, I said that there is a sense of being me through not just a thought or reflection, which possibly is the beginning of that inner world, the thought, but how that thought is manifested to me. I need to see this. I need to see this thought not just as a thing going in my brain, unless I'm a Swami or some sort of being that can sit on a rock. I am still finding myself requiring to see myself represented out there. The inner world, this is a bit of an irony, even anomaly. The inner world is actually out there. And how it is out there is not something that someone else tells me is out there, but I know it's out there. I don't need anyone to comment on what it is that I do or what it is that they think I'm doing. This is totally independent. I am truly aware that this inner world has a reflection. And without that reflection, I have no idea whether it exists or not. So my conclusion, here's my conclusion, how this feeling about being in touch with the inner world, it is represented in some form that I can identify, that I can actually, I suppose, in a way, like a reflection. It's like something that I see. I see myself in a mirror. I know I exist. It's kind of like that. But not in terms of a physical image of me being in a mirror, but something that comes out of my reflections, my thoughts, my sense of being who I am, whatever that might be, in a reflection outside of me, like a painting. This is why the idea of making marks, why children have such an affinity to just play with a marker. They see themselves in that activity as being truly connected to something that comes out of them. It's not just taking a dump when you're playing with your shit when you're 1 year old. It's like taking it to the next level of being able to create. Creativity is a reflection of that inner world. So what is it that makes me be able to contact that inner world? It's not just like, oh, meditation, oh, and sitting there and all this kind of stuff. What does it mean, people, to have a true look at oneself? It has to be reflected. Now here, I will make a conclusion. I will say, what does this reflect? This is important as well. It's not just sort of like, there it is, you throw it out there, and does it stick on the wall? It's like a spitball at the ceiling, and there it is, and it sticks, and it's there. What is it that has come out of me? What is it that is emerging? The fact that it is emerging suggests there is an inner world. But what is it that is emerging? And we need to set up for ourselves a platform for this. Some people are painters, artists, sculptors, creative people. They have, as far as I'm concerned, it's a very elegant way of accessing this inner world, but it's not the only way. I think there are just as beautiful, elegant manifestations of the inner world that we need to understand, regardless of anyone else, just for ourselves, to make a connection to this inner world through understanding what it is that has emerged. What emerges? It's not just thinking, oh, do I believe this? Do I believe that? Is this right? Is this wrong? Is that no? Those are the starting points to contact an inner world. What is it that makes us truly connected to something that is us? This is something each person needs to figure out for themselves. It's something that is it's a commitment. It's making a commitment toward making a decision, making a concrete decision of and following through on that. It's the only way I can conceive of explaining this incredibly important task we have as human beings before we shed this mortal coil. That there has been this commitment towards producing something that reflects, where I can identify something outside of myself, that is the inner self. And not just a regurgitation like what I call the culture of death is basically a regurgitation of someone else's story, which isn't working, by the way, which isn't working. Which I suppose leads me to the idea that whatever it is that is represented is actually something that works. And a teacher of mine said, you know, the nice thing about artists is that they're by themselves most of the time and in their studios, and they're some of the most enlightened beings because they don't hurt anybody because they're working on stuff, and they're 90% of the time their waking state is spent by themselves or making something, so they're out of trouble. They're not hurting anybody. But that's the lowest common denominator of the activity. What I'm saying is that what it is that we find to be truly the inner world ourselves must be represented. We must be able to see this in the real world. Our actions are the answer to our inner world. So the idea of looking inside is not just contemplative reflection or thought. It actually needs to be able to be manifested in its originality, in its uniqueness, in whatever that might be. And make no mistake about this, the most original, unique way of being, the highest level of humanity, is practicing conscience at this very moment. How many people are there that are truly practicing their conscience, meaning they are doing the right thing every day? This is the highest part of understanding our inner world. That's my decision. That's what I've understood. And I'm merely reflecting an aspect of myself in relation to conscience when I make a painting. So that all goes together, and I'll probably talk some more. As I said, I had no idea how this will evolve, this thinking process that I'm engaging today. But I will follow up on this some more, and it's not something that the fact junkies are going to appreciate, and even people that call themselves thoughtful individuals are preoccupied with this fact-based reality. What I find to be quite debilitating on being able to contact that inner world, that the facts out there, the facts, man, actually have very little to do with this activity of innerness, whatever that means to you. The facts don't matter. The external facts don't matter. In fact, they get in the way. Those are some of my reflections today. I'm going to continue this. I think it's important, and considering that I have no illusions about the state of affairs, the idea that I have said the world is not what it appears to be, and it is a perilous time that we are confronted, and we need to make this this transition from an external world to an inner world in order to reflect, in order to create something that works out there. I'm committed to the out there the same way I'm committed to the in there.